In the spring of 1912, the world moved with measured, confident steps. European empires and rapidly expanding industries were fueled by a specific, undeniable belief that human engineering had finally tamed the natural world. Look at the sheer scale of the hull rising in this Belfast shipyard. This is the Titanic, a massive statement of national pride. The White Star Line didn't build her to chase transatlantic speed records. Instead, they optimized for scale, prestige, and absolute comfort. Crossing the Atlantic was no longer considered a dangerous adventure. It was a highly regulated, scheduled service. Wealthy travelers expected ships to depart on time, arrive on time, and carry their cargo between continents with total reliability. That total reliability created a profound sense of security. The architects and operators of this floating city were absolutely certain their creation would function exactly as planned. And that absolute certainty would become their fatal vulnerability. The ship's reputation for safety rested heavily on her advanced hull design. It was divided into 16 separate watertight compartments, separated by heavy bulkheads equipped with steel doors that could be closed remotely right from the bridge. This redundancy led to the famous claim that she was unsinkable. But the calculations supporting that claim were based entirely on historical precedent. Past collisions usually involved a single point of impact, so the designers only planned for localized, contained flooding, not a cascading failure across a massive section of the hull. Because they believed their own engineering was flawless, the crew had no protocol for a catastrophic breach. When the rules of their environment suddenly broke, they were left psychologically blind to the reality of the danger. When the ship struck the iceberg, there was no dramatic crash. Instead, the jagged ice scraped quietly along the starboard side, popping rivets and opening a series of small, fatal seams well below the waterline. Many passengers didn't even feel it. This diagram of the ship's lower decks shows exactly what went wrong. The ship's designer quickly assessed the damage and realized water was flooding into the first 5 forward compartments. Titanic was mathematically designed to survive a maximum of 4. Looking at the same diagram as the flooding progresses, you can see the critical design flaw. The dividing bulkheads were not capped at the top. As the weight of the water pulled the bow lower, the flooded compartments would eventually spill over the top into the next ones, functioning exactly like an ice cube tray. Up on deck, the night air was calm and the ship felt incredibly stable. But below the surface, the limits of the design had been crossed. The ship was going to sink. An irreversible physical certainty. The wireless radio room was incredibly busy that night, but the operators worked for a private telegraph company, not the Maritime crew. Their priority was sending commercial messages. As a result, critical ice warnings were delayed, buried, or ignored. When the order came to abandon ship, the crew faced a severe equipment shortage. Existing maritime laws dictated lifeboat capacity based on the sheer tonnage of the ship, rather than the number of passengers aboard. Regulators incorrectly assumed lifeboats would only ever be used to ferry people back and forth to a nearby rescue vessel. Even with limited boats, the evacuations started terribly. The interior of the ship remained warm, brightly lit, and perfectly level. Presented with the terrifying prospect of a small, exposed rowboat hovering over the freezing ocean, many passengers succumbed to normalcy paralysis, outright refusing to leave the apparent safety of the decks. This schematic of a standard lifeboat illustrates the tragedy of the early evacuation. Given the ambiguous order of women and children first, some officers allowed no men to board at all, even if seats were empty. Without clear leadership pressing the urgency, boats were lowered with massive wasted capacity. Boat 1, capable of holding 40 people, left with just 12. While the first and second class passengers hesitated near the boats, third class passengers were trapped deep inside the vessel. The physical architecture of the ship utilized locked gates and complex winding corridors to enforce strict social segregation. Navigating that labyrinth in the dark prevented many from reaching the upper decks until all the boats were gone. The catastrophe occurred at the exact point where engineering limits, social rigidity, and outdated laws collided in the dark. By the time the rescue ship Carpathia arrived at dawn, the Titanic had vanished completely. The people pulled from the lifeboats, huddled under blankets on the open deck, had crossed a devastating threshold. In a matter of hours, they had gone from luxury passengers to traumatized survivors. As wireless reports of the sinking reached New York and London, crowds swarmed newspaper offices, desperate for information. The global shock rapidly turned into anger. The public demanded an explanation, and more importantly, they wanted a villain to blame for the unfathomable loss. Both the United States and Britain quickly convened formal inquiries. Lawmakers called surviving officers, company executives, and maritime experts to the stand. Their goal was to determine if the disaster was caused by criminal individual negligence or by something far deeper in the maritime system itself. The testimonies revealed a terrifying reality. Builders and operators had followed the letter of the law. The lifeboat shortage, the speed through the ice field, the delayed messages, it was all entirely legal. The tragedy proved that the rules themselves were broken. The inquiries forced immediate, sweeping reforms across the global shipping industry. Regulators mandated that every vessel carry enough lifeboats for every single soul on board. They also required passenger ships to maintain a continuous 24-hour wireless watch, so a call for help would never go unheard again. To address the environmental threat, maritime nations formed the International Ice Patrol. Ships navigating the North Atlantic would no longer operate in isolated darkness. Instead, they relied on an institutionalized system of hazard tracking and shared intelligence. Titanic's lasting lesson is that true safety isn't achieved by assuming systems are invulnerable, but by designing them to protect us when they inevitably fail.